mana whakawa.
Paul Foster-Bell.
E te mana whakawa tuarua tēnā koe, tēnā koutou katoa I ngā mema o te whare. Sir, it is reasonably rare in this House that we on this side praise our opponents sitting opposite, but I do want to take this opportunity to congratulate my colleague Grant Robertson for having introduced and stewarded through all three readings in this House this bill, the Wellington Town Belt Bill, which is to the members' credit and of great use and value to the people of Wellington. I want to join others in offering my congratulations to the hard-working officials, the staff of the Wellington City Council, but also the parliamentary officials, the advisors that we had, those who have assisted with the drafting of the bill, and all others who have been involved in advancing this important and very timely piece of legislation. Sir, as someone interested in history, I wanted to touch on some of the background to how we got to where we are today. Wellington isn't unique in New Zealand in having a town belt. Of course, Dunedin is the other town belt that we think of today, although Wellington's is by far the biggest and best, I have to say. At 625 hectares originally established in colonial times, compared to 225 hectares in the Edinburgh of the South. But those two cities weren't alone either in having town belts, and I think we should remember today that New Plymouth, Christchurch, Invercargill and Port Chalmers also had town belts. This land was deemed too valuable by the early settlers to be retained in recreation and undeveloped space, and was developed very quickly. I, sir, am very, very grateful that this wasn't the case here in Wellington. We decided it was too valuable to lose to development and retained it for that reason. So this is a local bill promoted by Wellington City Council, and it aims to protect the land of the Wellington Town Belt, modernise the governance arrangements. The 1873 Trust is being modified in this legislation, and to preserve the land hereafter for the benefit of the people of Wellington. The select committee process that was followed, in my view, sir, was excellent, and I want to put on record my congratulations to the very fine chairman of the select committee, my colleague Scott Simpson, the MP from the Coromandel, who did an excellent job of ensuring that the 31 submissions from interested groups and individuals were heard and given due consideration, and that we took on board some of the issues that were raised, because it's fair to say that there have been some amendments to the initial draft of the legislation, and these amendments are actually very important for the people of Wellington. A significant issue which was raised with the original draft of the bill was the removal of the applicability of the Public Works Act. And this was an issue that was brought up by the Chamber of Commerce, among others, who called into question the wisdom of removing the applicability of the Public Works Act, and particularly introducing special consultation provisions around the use of town belt land for absolutely essential infrastructure, or in fact emergency use. So another submitter who did take exception to this part of the original drafting was the local electrical lines company, who pointed out that in the event of an emergency situation, for instance an earthquake, the ability to temporarily erect high tension lines through the town belt to power Wellington Hospital over in Newtown, for instance, would be something that would either require some sort of special emergency empowering legislation, or could be done via the Public Works Act. So I think it was actually wise of the committee to, taking on board those suggestions, make the amendments to this bill. It avoids the controversy of this bill being seen to block crucial infrastructure projects, and too often Wellington has been set back by crucial transport infrastructure, the Basin Reserve, for instance. The bypass there that would have actually brought that up to date to where it needs to be, given that that is a traffic intersection which is at over 100% capacity, something like 105% capacity at the moment, and getting worse. So we wouldn't have wanted legislation which would prevent that kind of important infrastructure, which is absolutely essential to enable our capital city to continue to thrive and grow and develop. So I, sir, was very glad to see that that was dealt with in the amendments that were adopted during the committee stage and have been very well gone through during the Committee of the Whole House here as well. I do agree with the comments made by the Mayor, Celia Wade-Brown, who said the most important thing was getting a bill before the Select Committee, where the feedback and changes could occur. And like other members of the committee, I was listening to submitters, including Land Information New Zealand, who also backed up the points made by the Chamber of Commerce and the Electrical Lines Company around the issues to do with not having the Public Works Act applicable to the town belt. Sir, this is now a very good piece of legislation, and it does protect the town belt as it currently is, and also gives the provision to add in or reclaim parts of the town belt which have been alienated. In fact, it is a condition that the council finds itself imposed with, that they are not in a position where they can alienate land from the town belt without having to use the proceeds from that to further enhance the town belt by the addition of new lands. And the point has been made by members opposite. Some of the land that has been taken in the past is being put to public use. So whilst it's not the simple planted slopes or the forest land that the majority of the town belt is, which is available for public to walk through, and I think that is a very, very important part of the town belt, then the Vice-Regal Park, which is added on to the back of the Government House grounds, is a public amenity. It's something that is enjoyed by people when they're visiting Government House, and I think we should note that His Excellency the Governor-General, Sir Jerry Mataparai, has really opened up Government House more so than any previous Governor-General, with the addition of a good visitors centre, more frequent school visits, and also opening the house itself up to visitors during occasions such as investitures of those New Zealanders who have achieved a royal honour. So those going to visit the house have an opportunity now to explore the house and the grounds more than they ever have in the past, and this is something that I think is a welcome development, and is also using that land which was once part of the town belt and now forms part of the Vice-Regal residence and grounds for a public purpose, even if it isn't a walking track that might be openly available for every member of the public to walk through at will. So it is certainly not a case of town belt land being privatised, being used for commercial purposes, and I agree with the comments made by Grant Robertson that it is actually a good thing that there are limits to the amount of town belt land that can be even temporarily rented out, leased, or given some usage rights over for the operation of, be it maybe a sporting type facility, it could be recreational facilities, or it could even be an ice cream stall or a public convenience of some sort, an amenity of that kind. That limit of 8 hectares of town belt land that can be used for these purposes, I think, is very reasonable, and that was something that I'm pleased to say that there was cross-party support. So I want to add my voice of praise for the town belt to the voices of colleagues who have spoken so far. The town belt, the inner town belt, the 625 original hectares, that's now been whittled away to around about 400 hectares, which is in a horseshoe shape, Mrs. King. We could call it a boomerang shape or a half-moon shape. It's certainly not in the shape of a horse, as the member alleged earlier, but that horseshoe-shaped piece of land, which stretches from Mount Victoria through to Matairangi in the northeast, is actually supplemented by a larger outer belt. There's almost 5,000 hectares of green space that goes from the south coast round to Colonial Knob in Tawa. A Colonial Knob, Mr. Simpson, in the Tawa area. So that wider or the outer town belt is a collection of national park, conservation space, private space, both protected and publicly available, and also private lands. That does form a beautiful adjunct to the central town belt, and that is in a roughly horseshoe circular shape. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I commend this bill to the House.